Good evening, and a warm welcome to yet another biography event. My name is Kai Bird, and I have the honor of serving as the director of the Leon Levy Center for Biography, a wholly unique institution hosted by the Graduate Center, and founded by Shelby White and the Leon Levy Foundation in the year 2007. I want to thank Shelby for her steadfast support to this Biography Center. Specifically, I want to thank her for her recent rather incredible contribution of $10 million to our endowment fund, plus another pledge of up to $5 million in matching grants. So, if any of you have a little change to spare, the Leon Levy Foundation will match your grant up to an amount of $5 million. If you give us $1 million, we'll name one of the fellowships after you. You can talk to me after this event to discuss this fabulous opportunity. I have to make that pitch, no? That money's sitting there. Please note that our next event will be on Tuesday, December 3rd at 6:30 p.m. when Patchen Barse will be discussing his new biography on the great physicist Roger Penrose. Patchen is a recent fellow of the Leon Levy Center, and he will be in conversation with Natalie Wolchover. If you have not done so already, please sign up with your email address on our website so that you can be notified of our future events. But tonight I am delighted to welcome Jennifer Bartlett to discuss her recently released biography, Sustaining Air, The Life of Larry Eigner. She will be in conversation with our very own Thad Ziolkowski. Jennifer Bartlett was born in the San Francisco Bay Area and educated at the University of New Mexico, Vermont College, and Brooklyn College. She is the author of Derivative of the Moving Image, A Lullaby Without Any Music, an autobiography/anti-biography, published in 2014. Bartlett also co-edited Beauty is a Verb, The New Poetry of Disability. She has received fellowships from the New York Foundation for the Arts, Fund for Poetry, and the Dodd Research Center at the University of Connecticut. She is also co-founder of Zoglossia, an organization for poets with disabilities. Thad Ziolkowski is the deputy director of the Leon Levy Center for Biography. He is the author of Our Son the Arson, a collection of poems, a memoir, On a Wave, which was a finalist for the Penn Martha Albrand Award in 2003, and a novel, Wichita. His most recent book, The Drop, How the Most Addictive Sport Can Help Us Understand Addiction and Recovery, was published by HarperCollins in 2021. It's all about surfing. His essays and reviews have appeared in the New York Times, Slate Book Forum, Art Forum, and Interview magazine. He is the recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship, and he has a PhD in English literature from Yale University. Jennifer and Thad will be in conversation for about 40 minutes, and then they will take questions from our in-person audience. This event is being live streamed, so hello out there to all of our virtual audience. Afterwards, we have books to sell, so those of us who are here, get out your wallets. We will try to end this program after about 1 hour. Again, thanks to the Leon Levy Foundation for funding this and all our other events. Thank you. Over to you, Thad.
So, Jennifer has asked me to briefly describe ourselves. Yeah. Okay.
What do you look like?
What do I look like? I am an aging surfer in a uncharacteristically nice-looking suit and white guy. What do you look like?
I'm a middle-aged white woman with short salt and pepper hair, and I have a traditional isolated sweater and a blue dress.
Beautiful. So we, host these events that are about biographies of presidents and congresspeople, but whenever there's an artist as subject matter, I always like to foreground the reason we're paying attention to that person at all, why he or she was worthy of a biography. And in Eigner's case, I wanted to ask you to kind of say what it is that, for me, I mean, Eigner was someone who was a forerunner to language poets. I encountered him as someone who was almost kind of canonical already, and in a way, I have my internal response to him, which is very positive and strong, but I've never really articulated what it is that is great about Eigner in any kind of formal way. And I thought maybe we should try to hammer that out at the beginning of this.
Okay. Well, the poetics part why it's important to have a biography of him as a poet did not come clear until I was writing the biography, and so I can express that in a second, but I really want to reiterate that in books, all forms of media, we don't really have image of how people with severe disabilities live unless we're social worker or we live in the house with them. So on a disability justice level, it's really important to me to put forth this book that gives a realistic view of what someone with cerebral palsy lived like, particularly in the, he was born in the 20s. Now, obviously, he would have a different life, but people don't have, as far as I know, the only other person who has biographies with a quote-unquote severe disability is Helen Keller, and those were written by able-bodied people, but possibly, I don't even know. So to have someone with the same disability, although I had a very different life, write about it, it's a very singular process.
I mean, let's talk a little about Eigner's poetics, what he was celebrated for and misunderstood for from a disabilities angle, which surprised me. One of the surprising things to me about the book was how people like Denise Levertov, poets, Allen Ginsberg, misrecognized his use of the poetics of the open field, where the words are just, displaced over the page as a field rather than up against the left-hand margin, right? He started out writing that way, but then in I think it was 53, he heard Sid Corman. He was introduced to Olson and Pound and the modernist poets, E.E. Cummings,
Right.
and he suddenly saw that the page could be a field of play with the words spread over it as signifiers, right?
Right.
And that was
Right.
the thing that he continued to do throughout his life, and he's kind of celebrated for doing a particular thing with that, with projectivist or open field poetics, and yet, despite being poets, there was some misunderstanding of the way his disability affected that. And maybe you
Yeah.
could say a little about that.
Well, so I'm interested that you said, why did it surprise you?
Because I
They
thought,
were-
yeah, well, I thought that someone like Ginsberg and Levertov would be more sensitive to the way he was doing it as an artistic choice as opposed to being obliged to do it for reasons of physical limitations.
Well, Ginsberg, I'm a little less critical of him. He narrated that film, getting it together, or getting things together that Larry was a documentary about Larry. I think he didn't put as much thought into it. He was just sort of brought in to narrate that film, and he met Larry a couple of times. The real problematic figure, and it's a little sad because I used to idolize her because of her anti-war stance, is Denise Levertov. I'll just be blunt. She was extremely ableist. She said things to Duncan in letters that were horrible. I include some of those in the book. She called him a cripple, yada, yada, yada. It was pretty bad. And she typed his poems. So it's like she had this intimate relationship with the work, but she was, Denise Levertov was doing her own thing. She wasn't, and I were getting so poetic. I'm sorry. We should move away from poetry.
All right, let's move away.
No one know what we're talking about.
Well, we're gonna play. We're gonna take advantage of having
I do want
our.
to say, like, that fight, her and Duncan, Robert Duncan getting in that fight, they never really knew what happened, but she was hard to get along with. Yet she was an artistically conservative person. And I think that's why she finally broke off with Duncan, because he was not artistically conservative person at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we actually have queued up a video of Eigner reciting a poem. This is Eigner in Berkeley.
Okay.
He had two very distinct phases of life. One was in Swampscott, Massachusetts, where he was living with his parents, and then his liberated phase where he was in Berkeley from the time he was 51.
I push backwards then I go forward. So what time is day I may sleep or the time? What a consideration, what a question. Forward in a circle, the other way around it may have gone. trees and birds come. There's wood for each leaf and each flower, and a word for nothing. Yeah. Okay.
So, do you want to say anything about the video?
Well, that was taken late in life. I think it was a year or two before he died in his house in Berkeley, but it gives a sense of his physicality.
Yeah, and it's amazing how, especially before he moved to Berkeley and got a little distracted by social life, how prolific he was and how he lived inside letters and how many poems he published and how much fiction he published, or not necessarily always published, but wrote. And I was staggered by that. That was a real revelation to me about this, was how productive he was, especially before he left his parents' house. Maybe you could talk a little about his early life and his parents, and just tell the story of his first half of his life.
Well, his parents were upper middle class. They lived in Swampscott, Massachusetts, which is on the North Shore, Boston's North Shore, and he went to, he was very lucky to have early intervention. He went to 2 summer camps, including Camp Jeanette, which has become famous because of the film Crip Camp, and tried to get in touch with people to make that connection, but he went to Camp Jeanette early on in the 50s, and then he was at boarding school for middle school. He did homeschooling for high school, and then 7 correspondence classes for his college through the University of Chicago, and he received the typewriter as a bar mitzvah gift, supposedly from an uncle or cousin, because his mother wanted to keep him entertained. And I just want to go back briefly to that reason of why write a biography of Larry Eigner. A lot of people don't know this. Did you ever see online somebody made a poetry game where you could put your name in? Remember that, Charles? You put your name in, and then it make these webs of what poets you were connected to. Do you remember that? So it was like a game we all did. It was like, anyway, and then you could add names. You could be like, okay, well, I'm connected to Larry Eigner, and Larry Eigner's connected to St. Corbin and Charles Bernstein, and so on. So what people don't know is Larry was doing that through letters. He was writing to everyone. I mean, the big ones are Duncan, Lebertoff, Olson, Creeley, and then later the so-called language poets, Charles Ron-Tillman, Bruce Andrews, but he also corresponded with Paul Auster and Louis Zukowski and Margaret Randall and Gerard Mangala at the factory. So people don't really understand how centralized he was.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the typewriter as a bar mitzvah gift of this technology. It's his life as a poet and as a writer is unimaginable without this typewriter. And the role of technology, not just the typewriter, but the television, the radio before the television, hearing Sid Corman on the radio by chance, this is poetry. Anyway, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you see technology in that way and his life.
He could write by hand, but it was very laborious. So the typewriter made it physically possible, and then the other things brought him into society because George and I found out, people didn't know, he did start going out in the 70s before he moved to Berkeley. People don't know that, but he was at home a lot, and now, and the mail, although is that technology, and the radio and TV was bringing, and copious newspapers, literary journals, books, birds brought home, but he couldn't even go to the public library because it was pre-ADA and nothing is accessible. And I'm not all that happy with the world, but it is interesting that I can sit in my bed in rural Iceland in a village of 500 people, no, 200 people, and be on Facebook or watch a movie or, technology is a weird thing. Like, what if COVID had happened before we had computers? It's just, and even though for us now, TV and radio seem outdated, they were his internet.
Now, the situation at home, his mother was his main caretaker. It was, in a lot of ways, suffocating for him. He felt he was kind of required to be on her schedule. He couldn't stay up all night. He had various constraints. On another level, though, it's tempting to idealize that life for him as a writer, because it's like a little McDowell colony. Yeah. He's completely focused. He's completely in the world of letters in every regard, and he was so productive. This is where the disability starts to look like an ability, because of the way he's held in check from distraction. But that's I know that's not like where I want to come down on that point. Let's talk a little about his actual the way in which the disability impacts his poetry, good and bad.
Okay. So do you want to talk about his relationship with his mother or the freedom he had
Well,
as a
both.
disabled person?
Yeah, both.
That was just that was just some crap I came up with to put a good spin on it. Because I'm so pissed off about how people treat people with disabilities, particularly cerebral palsy, like we can't do anything. So I came up with this spin.
What is the spin again? Tell me.
Well, the spin is, oh yeah, you can, yeah, maybe Robert Crilly was out, scored all kinds of women, got to be a teacher and go to school, but he had to take care of children and have arguments with wives and have jobs, and Larry suspended, but Larry got to write all day. That's like all I mean, literally, he got up and wrote till he went to bed. And because she had to, his mother did everything. He didn't have to do laundry. He didn't have to cook. So yeah, that's sort of because people be like, oh, he's so gross. Well, you know what? He got to write poems all day. You had to do Subway, so.
Yeah. In the second half of his life, it's very different. When he finally leaves, his mother leaves Swampscott, moves to Berkeley, and he is able to take advantage of all of the progressive laws that had been in effect since, I think, 1962 was what is the name of the movement?
No, 62 feels early. I think it began in the 70s, the independent living movement, and then the first 504, which integrates schooling, and then later, the ADA.
Right.
But that wasn't until 92.
And so he lived in some group houses initially there, but he eventually settled into this house his brother bought for him, and he was living with Robert Grenier and Kathleen Frumpkin for quite a long time, right? And they had this household together. And can you talk a little about that phase of things for him?
Yes, so when it became clear his father was in bad health, and it became clear that his mother couldn't take care of him, his brother wanted him to move out to Berkeley. And at one point, his brother told me that he'd always intended that he knew about how progressive Berkeley is, and that's why he moved there. I didn't put it in the book because, or maybe I did, I don't know. I said like Donald Trump. I said like Donald Trump. Maybe I did. I can't remember.
I think you did, actually, as a detail.
Yeah, his sister-in-law said he was spoiled. He didn't want to. They really wanted him to be part of the independent living movement and live in group houses and go to group meetings and do exercises, and he hated it. And he kept telling they would take him to United Cerebral Palsy, and he'd be like, well, you can't do anything for me. So it sort of generated this thing that he was sort of spoiled. But Robert Greene actually did get him to be a lot more independent, because he talks about very specific things, learning how to tie his shoes, putting his clothes on. He got his finally got a electric wheelchair, which he almost killed himself on at first, but yeah. So, but he didn't.
I just thought that was really extraordinary that he had that kind of support from those two poets and that house, and how they organized their lives to. I mean, I know that, you know, Grenier was working as a proofreader at night, and Frumkin was teaching somewhere, but she was commuting. They had 2 kids, and there's Eigner in the middle of this, and this household functioned seemingly really well for a decade or something like that, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, it must have been very difficult for them to have someone there all the time. But Richard furnished, the brother bought the house. It was a very nice house. I think they got a stipend for helping him. I'm not sure. And Robert Grenier was really, really dedicated to Larry's work, and I would argue was heavily influenced by it, because his drawings, poems look exactly like Larry's handwriting. So
I never made that connection. I know that Robert Grenier wrote poetry of an avant-garde stripe on a typewriter, but he also did handwritten kind of gestural poems that are very unique and art object-like, and I never connected it to Eigner's handwriting, though, until you...
yeah, it looks exactly like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, Eigner seemed to, he had a lot of good karma with supporters and advocates and people who really believed in his poetry and insisted that he get in the New American Poetry anthology, and then insisted his books come out. And I was just astonished by that, and how he's at home and he's not deepening these connections through having beers with the boys or going out. It's all through letters, and it's all through this kind of communication on through just the mail and phone, maybe somewhat, but
Yeah, and also people very often went to visit him, and then as he said, the so-called language poets admired his work and elevated it. Ron Silverman dedicated In the American Tree to him, and Charles Bernstein and Bruce Andrews. Is it Bruce?
Bruce, yeah.
Yeah. He opened Language magazine. I think that was, yeah.
And he had a very strong monological tendency, right? He would speak without any dialogue. He wouldn't let anyone speak because of how he had been raised, and he just would hold forth. And this was something that had to be kind of slowly socialized out of him when he got to Berkeley, right? And you're like, learn to give and take, learn to speak and be quiet, and so forth.
Yeah, which is interesting because he did go to camp, and he did go to the middle school. Yeah, Massachusetts Hospital School, it was called. But I want to bring something up that we haven't brought up that everyone probably knows, you know, and this is an important thing to say in our current situation. Eugenics was created in the U.S. and it was very popular in the 30s. It was a degree, or at least classes in colleges. And so Larry grew up in a time where people were just routinely institutionalized. So it's amazing that he had this mother with dedication to him. And I'm a mother. Hi, child. He's out there. And I'm actually really close to my son. And I can understand the dynamic of the mother, you know, on the one hand, wanting to give everything to her kid, and people call her saint, and on the other hand, the son pulling away. People don't like to talk about it, but I'm sure he had sexual thoughts or ideas and other ideas about the world. He's a 40-year-old living with his parents. So, and people don't think about that because people don't think about disabled people in the way they think of able-bodied people. They just don't think we want to have sex or get married or have kids or that. They think all kinds of wacky stuff. I don't know.
Shall we turn it over to questions? Get some questions?
Sure.
Questions? I mean, I have a mic I want to distribute. One of the things that I do feel was hard for Eigner to live with was the pressure his parents put him under to write greeting cards.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
So I think he became a monologuist because he didn't feel like anyone could talk to him in return, right?
Yeah.
About poetry, anyway.
No, his parents, well, no, his mom was into poetry. That's why he became a poet, but she was very into, you know, not very traditional poet. Whoop, it's okay.
Jennifer, this is great. When did Eigner begin to write poetry? When did he realize that he had a gift for that? How old was he? And was it sort of sudden, or did it evolve slowly?
No, I don't know if it was sudden, but he started really early. His brother claims that when he was about 5 or 6, he would make up poems and his mother would write them down. His mother or brother would write them down. One of his mother's favorite books was Robert Louis Stevenson's children's verses, kindergarten verses.
Not
Yeah.
not Jekyll and Hyde.
No.
And those poems were like I'm sure they were more sophisticated than a typical child of that age. Were they rhyming poems or?
I haven't seen any poems before. His first chapbook came out when he was in middle school, and he wrote those about, I don't know, 12, 13, and they're very traditional, rhyming, sing-song. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Cheryl.
How's Iceland? I miss it. So I wondered, what was the most challenging part of writing the biography for you, and what surprised you about Larry Eigner as you wrote the book?
I didn't. Okay, I was gonna say I didn't find it challenging. What would have been challenging is proofreading and grammatical errors, but I had a lot of help with that. But the most challenging thing was learning how to read his letters, because letters, private letters are hard. Anybody's letters are hard. There's so much context, and he wrote all over the page and really messy. Yeah, exactly. And the most surprising thing to me was that his main influence was Charles Olson, not the poet Sid Corman. I thought Sid Corman was his most, and it was actually Charles Olson.
Hello. I would like to know what was the main reason for him to move out of his mother's house, and how it affected his work. Do you feel that there was a change in the way he wrote or his style of writing?
He had to move out of his mother's house because his father died or was dying, and she couldn't physically take care of him anymore. I think she was in her 70s at least when he moved, because he moved when I think he was 51 when he moved. And yes, his writing became a lot different, because, not a lot, but sparser, because he was in an environment where he could be social. Robert Grenade was a very, very popular person in Berkeley, and they always had people at their house and people coming in and out. He made friends with a man named Jack Foley, a poet, so he was always going out. So he had less time. And also, although cerebral palsy itself is not degenerative, everyone gets slower as they age. So you saw on the video, it was pretty difficult for him to type. Later. There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, I noticed in the video that the room was jam-packed with papers. So I'm wondering what Larry Eigner's archive is like, and if you, where it is and how you used it.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you brought that up, because we always forget to talk about that. Unlike other biographies, this book is almost exclusively based on letters and autobiographical things that Larry wrote and articles he wrote. I did very few interviews, and of those I used very, very limited information, and so he had these massive and masses of paper, and some of they ended up at, well, his first archive was at University of Kansas because his cousin Edwin worked there, so all of his manuscripts went there. Then there was, because he corresponded with Corman, there was a lot in the Harry Ransom Center. Then there was some in the Dodge collection at UConn. That's where Charles Olson's archive is, so that makes sense. And then he had a large archive at Stanford and a little tiny thing at Brown, so they're all over. But I have to tell you the best story. So when we were taking Lisa Jordo's class, she said you had to go to the Berg Center at the New York Public Library. That was, do you remember that was the assignment she gave us? And I'd never been in the archive. And I loved the Berg Center. I found a letter there between Ruth Kaiser and Olson. And so I was like, they had some of Larry's letters there, but they weren't really cataloged, and they were listed on paper, not electronically, and I got these letters, and I got a manila envelope, and I put my hand in it, and I pulled out like 50 pages of letters that Sid Corman and Larry Eigner had written, like what in the 70s and 80s. It was a miracle, and they weren't archived or anything. They were shoved in this envelope. So, and then another story is, I met through Charles Bernstein. I met his family, and they liked me, so they gave me all of his remaining stuff, and I donated it to the Dodd collection because I wanted it to be with Charles Olson. But I kept one thing, which my son has. I kept Larry's annotated copy of volume 1 to 3 of the Maximus poems. So,
So I had a question. We all know that biography takes a long time to write. How long did it take you to write this book?
12 years.
Only 12 years.
Only 12 years, yeah.
Hi, thank you for this. I have a question about audience. So part of what you talked about tonight is how badly people with disabilities are treated and how misunderstood disability is, that it's, you know, ordinary life. And I'm wondering, as a writer, how much you felt like you could give voice to that in the biography, and how much you felt like you needed to sort of pull your punches a little bit for a non-disabled audience.
That's a complicated question. I mean, Larry wasn't an activist or anything. I mean, I just wrote his life so everyone can understand it, I think. I think I did have to explain ableism maybe once, I don't know, but it's not an academic book, so it's not about disability justice. It's about a life of a poet who happened to have a disability. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi.
Hi, where have you been?
I've been here. So this is maybe a hard question because, you know, you spent over 12 plus years working on this, but I'm curious, you know, you spoke a little bit about his influences and other people that he influenced, and I'm curious if you can kind of point to any ways that you feel working on this influenced your own poetry practice or any part of it.
Oh, that's a good question, Liza. I think it's sort of internalized his writing. I internalized his poetry, and I think it made my own poetry more sparse and exact and maybe a little bit more fragmented. And is that what you mean?
Well, thank you very much. I think that will be the last question, unless there's someone else. I would like to thank Shelby White for her support of this and all our events. There are books to be bought and signed over there. And thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Kai. Thank you, Shelby.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank